this edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast, featuring our discussion of the AMC show Preacher, episode 104, which is really technically the 5th episode, entitled The South Will Rise Again. I'm Adam Foxman, this is Mathis Coos, and you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. We would love to field any questions, comments, and concerns. At this point, I can pretty much guarantee you that your questions will make it to air, as we're still just in our first week of recording. Speaking of which, please rate us on iTunes. This is the number one way that you can support our show, and we would really appreciate it. What's going on, Mathis?
Not a whole lot, man. How are you doing today?
Yeah, excellent. You have a good Sunday?
Yeah, pretty good so far. Real quick, aren't we doing episode 4?
I mean, this is technically episode 4. Wait, is this episode 4 or is this episode 5?
It's episode 4, but I think it's 1.003.
Oh, God damn. I swear to God, that's going to fuck me up.
This numbering is nothing but a headache.
It's seriously the worst. Okay, alright, well, apologies, but you're 100% absolutely right. It's 103, and we're on episode 4.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're about to talk about the same episode. I'm sure it'd be funny, but confusing.
Yeah, I think it would only be funny to us. So.
Yeah, pretty
I'm
much.
glad that you brought that up. You want to go ahead and jump into it?
Absolutely, yeah. So this episode kicks off with kind of a horrific landscape. It's like a night town, vacant except for a mascot walking around, and then there's a girl in her underwear running frantically away from the city.
Yes. And so at first you don't really know what's going on. It looks like she's being chased by somebody who's going to kill her. She's not wearing any pants. She is running all throughout Anvil into a field in the middle of a foggy night, and then somebody's chasing her with a gun. As the scene kind of develops, it looks like there are other women hiding. Another one is running in the field with her at one point and actually gets shot. Mm-hmm. And finally the dude catches up to her, and she turns around and she says, "You got me, Clive." And he says, "I always do, Lacey." And then he shoots her, but it's just paint. So they're basically doing like a paintballing sort of thing.
Yeah, and they really build up the tension on it. It very much seems like a horror movie. She's running. There's this other girl like, "Get out of here. This is my spot." And, this truck pulls up, and he pulls out a gun from the gun rack. But it ends up being deadly anyway, because she stumbles back, shocked that he actually still shot her, even though he caught her. And she falls into a giant sinkhole and dies.
Exactly, and then cue the intro music, which, by the way, this is the first time I'll be able to mention the intro music, because only before recording this one had you finished it, and I just want to give a serious shout out on air. I waited until this moment to be able to tell you, because, I seriously was blown away at how good it was. It's so awesome.
Thank you. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, because there's such that, raw harmonica going on, and it's kind of a rockin' tune, but yeah. I figured the flute's a pretty emotional, analog in the jazz world, so I tried that.
Yeah, that was the right way to do it, and just to kind of clue anybody else in, we had talked about, since the whole point of the show of what we're going to be doing is, after Preacher is done, we're going to be moving on to the next show, and we're just going to do this throughout the year. And then, once the next season comes on, we'll be doing that and hopefully just increasing our repertoire. But we wanted to have different themes for each show, but somehow kind of fit them into the same sound and mold. And so we talked about different things, and jazzy elevator music was one of the ideas that got thrown around, and I didn't even know Mathis was working on it, and he just sent me the audio file, and I was just like, "Oh, it's awesome. I love it, man. Good job."
Thank you. Yeah, it should be fun to experiment with this type of stuff with each show.
Yeah, for sure. But okay, so yeah, this scene right here, it's actually pretty fucked up, because like you said, 90% of it, you think something incredibly sinister is following her, and it just ends up being, Clive, one of Kincannon's men, and he just pops her with the paintball gun, but then she actually falls to her death into that hole. So So let's see, what's the next part after that? Oh, we get another flashback, a young preacher, and he's preparing the chapel for the services, and his pops delivers a sermon to the congregation. And one thing I really took from this is the church looks so much nicer in the flashback than it does in current day.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that, but yeah, it's so like clean lines, pristine, very white.
But like, it's just like, yeah, warm and clean looking. Whereas now, I mean, like, there's paint chipped off everywhere, rickety boards. I mean, it's completely bare bones, like very few decorations or anything like that. So that kind of struck me that, like, obviously this church has fallen into some very serious disrepair.
Yeah, so it makes a little more sense when you kind of get this idea that his mission is to save the town.
Yes, exactly. Kind of makes you think it would be awesome if they set us up for like a sweet 80s style
montage.
Montage. What's the montage song?
Montage.
Yeah,
need a montage. Something like that.
Yeah, so we can only hope. But anyway, there wasn't really much more to it. But I only brought it up just to kind of mention the state of disrepair that the church is in currently.
Sure, but ultimately it's just Jesse kind of dazing off. Then he wakes up in the church, and Cassidy wants his attention, and Jesse just doesn't have the time for it. He gives him 2 minutes.
Yeah, and Cassidy's trying to tell Jesse about the 2 angels, which are Fiore and DeBlanc, and he just is giving by far the worst rendition you could do of that tale. Like, I had barely any idea what he's talking about.
I mean, he has the craziest accent to begin with.
Yeah.
He's not doing the best job describing it. He talks about he doesn't do well with violence and just going on about things. And Jesse is just completely confused.
Yeah, he does, and not only confused, but really seems like he gives like maybe 2% of a shit.
Yeah, and then after him talking about them being more like androids, not vampire hunters that Jesse thought, Jesse points out, he's like, "Hey, is that an apple pipe?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's what I thought." Gets in the truck.
Yeah, like, what were you smoking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then he's like, "It's not like that, Padre."
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that at this point, you do get to see Cassidy sport the Asian agricultural hat.
God damn it.
And the indigenous populace poncho as well.
Oh my God. Tell me that you just wrote that out so that you could remember that phrase.
I was looking forward to it all day.
That's funny. All right, nice callback.
All right.
But yeah, so anyway, and Preacher actually says something about nice outfit, by the way.
Yeah, he looks so silly out there in the sun dressed like that.
He really does. But anyway, so yeah, he tries to explain it. Nothing comes of it at all. Preacher ends up driving off. And then next scene is you're back at the site where the prostitute, who you find out her name's Lacey, where she fell through that hole. And sheriff's there, Kincannon, all of his men, the Toad Vine girls, which is the whorehouse, by the way.
Sure.
And the pimp lady, who you find out her name later in the scene. Or maybe you knew it all along, but I just wrote it down this time as Mosey.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah, and Tulip's there too. So they're all gathered around as like this... truck is hoisting the dead body out of the pit, and Kincannon gives what has got to be the
speech.
It's rousing. Is what it is.
It's just absolutely phenomenal. I think it's this isn't verbatim, but it's basically you boys got to watch your roughhousing, and you girls got to watch out for holes when you're walking around. Yeah,
exactly. And that's literally it. He kind of stares for a second, then hands the microphone to his secretary, and that's that. And Tulip seriously cannot believe how like everybody is so apathetic in that moment.
Yeah, she's like, "What the fuck is this?" And then she talks to the pimp lady about the shitty speech, and I think she says, "What is this, Chinatown?"
Yeah, I didn't actually get that. What did that mean?
I don't know. I just thought it was a really weird phrase.
Yeah, because I didn't notice anybody wearing Chinese agricultural hats.
No, it didn't tie into Cassidy at all, so anyway.
All right, well, anyway, so, yeah, basically, I mean, truly nobody there seemed to give a shit except for Tulip. Not any of even the prostitutes didn't even seem all that messed up about it, but definitely not the men or the sheriff or anybody like that.
Sure.
Okay, so next scene was Jesse visits Emily, the church lady, at her house, and her son answers the door, says she's pooping.
Yeah, that was
very
a funny
ceremonious.
Moment. Yeah.
And she comes out buckling up, and they talk about the church coffers and ways they might be able to fill it up. And he suggests that they raffle off a big screen TV. And that's his way that he's going to attract more people to the upcoming Sunday service. So what did you think about this part? And where he asks Emily to go get the TV after her double and things like that.
It didn't do a whole lot for me. I mean, they have a few scenes together, and the biggest trend being that she wants the church to be run in a more traditional way, but still has faith in Jesse, and he's trying these things that. It reminds me of Better Call Saul. He's like trying to find ways to do things that aren't conventional and are kind of bending the rules, and that's just what he's used to because of his prior life.
Yeah, that is actually a good point. He is actually a lot like Saul, but instead of pimping out his law firm, he's doing it with the church.
But that's kind of the main stuff I took from it. Otherwise, it's not. The most memorable scene. It's kind of a continuation of those feelings you already get. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, at this point, I kind of feel like a lot of her scenes are not the most powerful. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's. I think she's almost more like a connecting and exposition piece to, I don't know, tie things together. But I also feel like you could not use her and still tie scenes together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe she'll grow on me, but at this point she's in so many scenes, but still feels like such a third-rate kind of character.
Yeah, so one thing I'll point out is in the comic, an interesting thing they do that at this point I'll potentially spoil, but I don't think they're going to do it in the show, is from the get-go Jesse talks to John Wayne. It's like his imaginary friend is conscious. And he doesn't have that in this show. She's basically as conscious, and
I totally forgot about that.
If that's the idea, that's a much more boring version.
Yeah, it definitely is. Although there might be I don't know, some casting issues trying to get somebody to do the job. Not to mention that would be very confusing. I feel like for the viewer to watch him talking to an imaginary John Wayne.
Yeah, and to have the moment where like John Wayne reaches out of the TV and shakes his hand, and then they're friends for life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty weird moment.
I want to go back and read that.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun, trippy book. And like I've said before, they give so much of the exposition in the first issue that it's weird to think that we're this many episodes in and just now like officially understanding that these guys are angels from heaven. Because they're in the book as well, and they look much more heavenly. You actually see them in heaven, so they've kind of taken an approach to make it seem a little less off-putting, I think, for audiences, and ease them into the overall weirdness that the show is bound to have.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going on. I mean, because if you just drop that big steam and deuce on everybody right in episode 1, I think that would just be really too much to take in, and the show would just seem like overtly silly, which it is, but I mean, they're obviously trying to give it also that darker, heavier tone, and they want to kind of like sink their hooks into people through that.
Yeah, they're trying to cast a wide net and appeal to a broader audience, but also without they're still very edgy, and I think that's a good choice in terms of eventually being able to present the audience this really off the wall stuff because you've already kind of gained their trust.
Yes, exactly. So the next scene is he has a flashback, Preacher, and it's a young Jesse, and he's smoking with his friends, which one of them I think was a young Tulip. Is that what you thought?
I didn't catch on to that, but there was that girl
I'm like
sitting on the park bench.
Sure. She gave that same sort of
sassy
stare. Yeah, exactly, that sassiness. But his father comes around, admonishes him, and just starts whipping on him in front of all of his friends and emphasizing that the others look to him for guidance. And there's really not much else to it. I just brought it up mainly to point out the fact that because I really thought that was Tulip, so it makes it seem like he's known Tulip since adolescence.
Sure.
Which I thought was interesting. And then it cuts to the present, and he's just smoking a cigarette still, and kind of lost in thought. And I also bring up this point because the ashtray that he's ashing in is going to come up later in the episode.
When he
again in a flashback, so he still has the ashtray that he stole in when he was a kid, and I don't know. So I thought that there was a couple little cool tie-ins right there.
Yeah, they have the flashback stuff, and I don't mind it. I think we're obviously able to see a few cool things like the entropy of the church, but I also don't 100% know where they're going with it and what the point of it is over, say, other stuff they could show.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I wonder if they just do it to enrich maybe the overall tapestry that the show is being woven on, but right now it's certainly not really driving anything.
Sure, and to me, Jesse being the absolute main character that we've gotten the most insight into his thought process, I think if it's just to build character, we should be spending it on Cassidy because he's 100 years old and we don't know his past.
That is true. We have not had flashbacks for any other characters other than Tulip flashing back to what we now know as Carlos pulling away. Yeah, exactly. So, that's pretty interesting. And speaking of Cassidy, next scene I thought was a really funny one. It's him visiting DeBlanc and Fiore at the Sundowner Motel. And they're having kind of this funny exchange about what their plan is. They mentioned that the plan is they cut him open with the chainsaw, and then the other guy's,
we could sing to him.
We can try singing again. And Cassie's like, oh, okay, I think he'd prefer that plan over the chainsaw one.
Yeah, it's just so goofy. It's like we could cut him open, or we could coax him with a siren song and have him end up in a coffee can.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go with option A there. And Cassidy says that the preacher basically is going to want some drugs as compensation.
Because he's a hardcore addict, yeah.
Yeah, says something about he has trouble with controlled substances or something like that. And then these angels are not carrying around any drugs, so they end up... just handing him the wallet. He takes literally every single dollar out of there and throws it back at him.
It's funny.
And so basically that's it. He then promises he's going to convince Jesse to meet with them. After he ends up leaving, Fiore is just absolutely not buying this at all, and he takes out this really strange looking telephone, just yet another one of their old contraptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jinx. And basically he says something to the effect of, it's time to let them know what's going on. Has the worst accent. I really regret doing it instantly afterwards.
At least you committed to it.
I did. I really went for it, but halfway through, the hairs on my neck were standing up.
It was unbearable.
Yeah. But then DeBlanc tells Fiore not to make the call, says that they're going to be punished, for coming down here without permission. So did we know before then that they're really kind of off the leash here, like not doing something that they're supposed to?
I don't think so. I don't think they ever gave us that impression that I'm aware of.
Yeah, for me that was I think that was news to me at that point, that they definitely were not supposed to be down here, and now you're kind of getting the sense that they are not super high up on the chain necessarily, and
sure.
Somebody over them is not going to be liking on this. But there wasn't much else to the scene. And then after that, there's just a quick scene of Cassidy
doing all those
getting
drugs.
some pleasure from a prostitute with a table full of drugs that he got from his little deal with Fiore and DeBlanc. All right, but next scene was Kin Cannon, playing Qbert at his desk.
Yeah,
so that was a
which
funny
is pretty
touch.
funny.
Yeah, and do you know what his secretary's name is by chance?
I don't.
I wrote it down. I didn't know, but I actually pulled it offline. It's Miss Oatlash.
Oatlash, that's an interesting name.
Yeah, that for whatever reason that wasn't I never caught that, so I went and looked it up. And so anyway, she comes in and alerts him that Miles, who is the mayor, has arrived, and Miles sits across from Kincannon and asks him why sinkholes are appearing everywhere in all of Kincannon's fields. Kincannon's not really answering it and brings up Miles' recent meeting with the Green Acre Group, which is like this sustainable farming company. Mm-hmm. And Kincannon is just super unhappy that he met with him. Yeah, and basically after Miles gives him the brochure and stuff like that, and mentioning that tax revenues are down 58% over the last 10 years, how they got to change or the town's going to die out. Kincannon takes the brochure, throws it back in Miles' briefcase, and drops trow and starts whizzing all over it.
Yeah, Kincannon is becoming a very fun character to watch. He's very you just don't really know what he's going to do.
Yeah, he is very unpredictable. I mean, just like that speech that he gave at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I was sitting there laughing at it because it's just like the most inappropriate sort of admonishment that he's giving everybody there, instead of mentioning anything about like the tragedy of the death. He is a bizarre little character. So yeah, definitely liking him at this point.
Yeah, I love his little prosthetic rat teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that he leaves his mouth like half cocked
half
open
ajar,
all the time. Yeah, it's like you see them just dangling there all the time.
Yeah, it looks like he's always ready to strike.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next scene, you're back with Fiore and DeBlanc at their motel room, and the phone starts ringing, and they panic for a quick second, and then they realize, oh wait, no, it's just the hotel phone.
Yeah, not the God phone.
Exactly. So now like they really are like really worried about what's going to come down from on high when people find out what's going on. And so that's pretty much it for this scene. Fiore goes to the hotel desk and orders a burger, which
they don't serve.
Yeah, obviously, because it's just a tiny little motel. I just thought that was kind of funny. It really illustrates how out of touch with reality they are when they're on Earth.
Yeah, then he's having to figure out how a snack machine works and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're obviously they know of humanity. There's some, these other creatures, they're angels, but they don't understand how any of this works. They've just kind of been up there on high.
Yeah, exactly. And next scene is a church lady whose name is Emily. She gets home with the new TV and stuff like that. And Miles was babysitting. Miles is the guy who just had his briefcase pissed in 5 minutes before. And so she sits down, has a drink. They're laughing up about different things, and
he's obviously flirting the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. He's telling some awful story about some dude that defecated on his driveway.
Yeah, he's quite the storyteller.
Yeah, he is and I love his little nervous giggle.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying.
Yeah, but anyway, so she just out of nowhere says, I'm never going to be with you, right? And he says, yeah, you told me enough times. And then she takes off her pants and says, you got to leave before morning. Kids almost got you last time. Yeah,
so they obviously have a benefits-only relationship, and I think he wants more, and she's trying to make sure that's not happening, so they go in the next room and fuck.
Well, I mean, that's alluded to. We don't actually see that happen.
That's true, but he does kind of straighten his tie, and, he kind of puffs his chest up as he walks out of there.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's obviously business time, because when he's down to his socks, it's time for business. That's why they call them business socks.
I was hoping you made a Flight of the Conchord reference.
It took me a second to get all the lyrics together to do it.
Yeah, better than I don't remember the lyrics. I just remember the feeling.
Yeah. Okay, so the next scene is all the prosties and Kincannon's crew.
The whorehouse Toad Van.
Exactly. So basically, this one prostitute is given some sort of eulogy, and Tulip interrupts her and just starts going off at everyone.
Yeah.
She and Clive end up trading some words, and Mosey gives everybody a little bit of, an hour on the house or something, just to kind of, diffuse the situation.
Yeah, just to kind of get everyone out of the room, because, Tulip's got tempers on high, and she thinks the fight's about to break out. So, she wants everyone to take a load off.
And did you notice Tulip mentioned something about her mom, used to be upstairs fondling balls and working the shaft? She said the way she put it was pretty gross, but it was something to that effect. So basically, I think saying that her mom worked here once upon a time.
Oh, okay. I mean, I did hear her describing a hand job, but I didn't hear that it was about her mom. That would have made it worse.
Yeah, it did. So anyway, she ends up marching upstairs, slamming open the door and just whipping poor Clive, causing him to fall through a window. And then all of a sudden, Clive comes to the bedroom door, and Tulip realizes, oh shit. That wasn't Clive. It's a total stranger. Camera zooms down below, and Cassidy's just sitting there with blood spurting from his neck, groaning.
Yeah, he has a giant piece of glass in his neck, blood everywhere, and obviously Tulip is unaware that he is a mortal creature.
Yeah, exactly. So she's taking him to the hospital. They're in
a car. Freaking the fuck out.
Yeah, a car is racing to the hospital. She's in the back cradling him while a prostitute's driving, and she's just apologizing profusely and just calling herself stupid for all her little anger issues. And Cassidy is watching her talk, and then he just asks her to kiss him. And she does, probably because she thinks it's game over for this dude anyway.
Yeah.
And so then they get to the hospital, and Tulip, disappears for just a quick second, just urgently trying to get somebody to get, a doctor over there or something. Turns around, and Cassidy's gone.
Yeah, the lady tries to get her to sign for him. She's like, I don't have time for that. My friend is dying. He's literally bleeding out of the neck. And the nurse is like, what friend? And there's no one there.
Yeah, all there is now is a trail of blood, which she follows and discovers Cassidy on the floor amidst a bunch of different blood bags, just sipping them like juice boxes, basically.
And needless to say, she's a little freaked out, and then it cuts away.
Yeah, but I thought that just overall that was a pretty good scene. The fact that he asked for a kiss in the back of the car,
and they had the "In Love" music when it happened.
Oh, I didn't notice that. No, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
wait, what
and you
song
can see
was
the
it?
eyes, and you can see Cassidy's eyes. She's like,
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, yeah, the next one was a flashback. Jesse's father, John, wakes him up in the middle of the night, takes him to Kincannon and Meat and Power. Jesse waits out in the hall while John goes into Kincannon's office, and this is where Jesse steals that ashtray that you see adult Preacher ashing in later in the episode.
So he's listening in the whole time. There's some kind of altercation, and ultimately it ends with denounce him, and
yeah, that was the only part I caught. Were you able to hear any other stuff?
No, I mean, I think it was supposed to be mumbling. It's related to Kincannon, but you're not sure what. And then Preacher walks on the way out. He walks by the door. It goes slow-mo. He's obviously mortified at what he sees, and then it cuts to them in the car, and his father simply saying, "Some men just can't be saved."
Yeah, exactly.
So it's ominous, but you don't know what the purpose of it is yet.
You really don't get anything. Yeah, because all I caught really was the denounce him, and then obviously the part in the car. But you don't get. You just kind of get the sense of the relationship between Preacher's father and Odin Kincannon's father was at some point grew hostile. So we don't really know why or what the deal was.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
And then the very next scene is actually Jesse visiting Odin Kincannon's office, where they're building a model of the Alamo together.
Yeah, which was an odd scene. Had Jesse and Odin crossed paths before?
Not that I recall. To me, this was the first time we ever saw them together.
That's what I thought, which was weird to me. I don't know, because
that they make it seem like they have this really friendly, familiar relationship with each other, and yet we have not been clued into it at any given point in any of the prior 3 episodes.
Exactly, and then your initial, I think, assumption would be, well, he knows lots of people. He's the preacher, but it becomes very obvious over the course of conversation that he's an atheist and doesn't go to church.
Exactly. So it kind of makes you wonder if they were setting the scene before it, perhaps to show that there is like some sort of long-standing relationship between their families, and maybe Preacher and Kincannon
grew up together.
Yeah, maybe they grew up together. Maybe they don't harbor the same enmity that their fathers at some point eventually had for each other. I don't know, but Jesse ends up basically inviting him to church, and Kincannon is basically just kind of mocking the whole concept of going to church just because you're scared of the afterlife, and he lists off a bunch of other things that could possibly be real.
All of them being like terrible depictions of hell, and then at the end of it, he's still just like, so what? I know what's at the end, and it's nothing.
Exactly. And then Preacher says, well, I could make you come, and then Kincannon says, that wouldn't be very Christian-like of you. Yeah, exactly. But
which
then
is
he
a
ends
really
up
good scene, because you start to see Jesse considering maybe not, I don't know, you're seeing him think about maybe frivolous ways to use his powers.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's still kind of him plotting, sort of the way that he was earlier in the episode. Like, he's obviously got some scheme that he's trying to pull off here, so he ends up betting Kincannon, I guess, the land that the church is built on, maybe? Something like that, which he says is the biggest plot in Anvil that Kincannon doesn't already own.
Yeah, he's essentially saying in their family land he always wanted. It's the only land he doesn't own in his vicinity. So now you start to realize, because at this point, I think earlier we saw another little gas pump in the ground that they zoomed out of, and you're realizing they're essentially, surrounding the area that Preacher's on, but not actually in it, because they own the land around it. And he obviously wants to take that bet because, he's a greedy corporate man.
Yeah, also greasy.
Yeah, greasy. I don't know. He doesn't have any hair, but he's greasy. Otherwise,
I actually didn't catch the part about the pipes not going onto the land. So we're sure about that. I mean, I can't refute it, but I just
no. They don't mention it, but he talks about it's the only land in the area that he hasn't been able to claim that he wanted. And
gotcha.
And they ended that one episode showing the pipe kind of outside of the cemetery and the church.
That's true, and it was on the opposite end of the cemetery from where the church was too.
Yeah, and then they have, I think it's this episode, but maybe it's next one. But they have another one of those pipes standing far away, and they kind of give you another angle.
Yeah, I remember that. I just couldn't remember where it was in relation to the church. But no, I guess at this point, that's from what we know that. Definitely that does not appear to be on the church's land, which would make sense if they don't own it. So, okay, all right. And that was pretty much all there was to it. Next scene goes right to them at church. Jesse is standing before a packed house and tells the congregation in no uncertain words that the world is turning to shit, where the sheriff nods approvingly when he says that. I thought that was kind of funny. And then he tells them that it's all their fault. He says, "You turned your back on the Lord." He vows to bring them back to God one by one. And then he walks up to Kincannon.
Yeah, he walks up to Kincannon. He knows what the stakes are: his land versus his faith, and basically tells him how perfect life will be if he accepts Jesus into his heart. That the hands of trees will be clapping for him. And he looks at him very sincerely. The congregation is just like on eggshells. Will you serve God? And Kincannon very candidly says, no.
Nope. That's pretty much it. And then he asks him again. Yeah. Yep. And then Kincannon is like, basically like, can't believe that he was like the gall of this dude. So he gets up and starts to go. With everyone still watching, Jesse puts his hand on Kincannon's shoulder, employs that
serve
word
God.
of God magical power thing, and he just says serve God. And then what did Kincannon say after that?
So then he asks him again, so what do you say now, Kincannon? Will you serve God? Of course I will.
Yes, sir.
No question about it.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
sir.
Right.
Yeah, just like so matter of fact. why would you even question it at this point, you know?
And then the room kind of like erupts in like not like applause or anything, but like everybody's now chatting with the person next to them.
Yeah,
like
rabble.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I thought that was a really powerful scene in the show. Really kind of showed first off that the town really looks up to Kincannon, or at the very least fears him or respects him or something. But also, gotta say, hats off to the preacher and that raffle idea, because he definitely did put some butts in them pews.
Yeah, he is marketing the church like a pro for Jesus.
Exactly. Now he just needs to do the bus stop benches and stuff like Saul.
Yeah, just 1-800, I don't know. I'm not good at marketing.
Swing and a miss.
No joke there, just something about God.
I can't wait to do one of those every episode.
Yeah, that's my favorite. So then the next scene after this is
moving on.
Fiore and DeBlanc. Is that how you say their names?
Yes, yeah.
Still at the hotel, wanting to do something. And,
snacking on Cheetos.
Yep, that's right. He has them from the snack machine. Phone rings. He grabs the hotel phone. Unfortunately, that motherfucker keeps ringing. They know it's God above.
Bum bum bum.
Yeah, but their worst dreams are coming true.
Exactly. So they're just like staring motionlessly at the phone as it just rings and rings and rings, and then the music starts up and the credits roll.
Yeah. So that's a wrap on that episode. Overall, it was, it continues to move the plot forward. I think the highlights of this episode, more than anything else, are Kincannon and getting a more of a view of him and how he's going to integrate into the plot.
Definitely. There were a couple other little stage setting moments, but this was definitely a Kincannon plotline episode. Like, that's really what they were moving forward here.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, it is very much an exposition episode. It doesn't have some of the action set pieces that you have. I mean, the action scene is the entry scene when the girl dies in the sinkhole.
Yeah, and you do get a little bit of the peripheral characters like Tulip. You get a little bit more background on, and I mean there was other stuff, but overall it was a Kincannon heavy episode, and I thought honestly that it was great. I thought the intro was really creatively done, and just throughout the whole thing you just getting a little bit more insight into the town and sort of the hierarchy here again, because you really see that Kincannon is really at the top of the pecking order, even over the mayor in the town. Yeah,
so I mean, it lays out a little more history of the town. It gives you history of Jesse that outside of the Kincannon connection, it doesn't seem that overly necessary, but it moves things forward. You now have Cassidy and Tulip being connected in some way, and then they both connect to Jesse, but independently from each other.
Exactly. So the tapestry's starting to be woven a little bit. The web's being spun. So overall, I thought it was a pretty good episode. I thought that. What do you think? Like maybe 7.5 or 8 out of 10?
Yeah, I was right around between 7 and 8. It's not something that gets you to a 10 that just has some like crazy reveals or some satisfying conclusions. No crazy action pieces, but
solid middle of the season episode.
Yeah, it's moving the plot along without having anything insane in it, but you don't feel cheated. You don't feel like it's a boring episode or that they were just giving you tons of filler.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that was that's pretty much it for this episode here. You can definitely join us for the next episode, which we should be posting up pretty shortly after this one. We're trying to catch up to live shows here, and we're actually pretty damn close. We should have it done in time for what would the next episode be? Would that be the 7th episode? Will we be able to catch up before then?
Yeah, 7th episode would air
a week from Sunday, a week from today.
Wait. Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
No, 7 airs tonight, doesn't it?
I don't know. Either way, by next Sunday that's what we're aiming for, right? Yeah,
and then we'll be able to bring in the season finale, right on time.
Exactly. So we'll catch up just in time for it to be done. You're welcome.
But we'll obviously have another kick-ass show to cover after that.
Exactly. And so you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. Please do. We'd love to field any of your questions, comments, and concerns. Speaking of which, please rate us on iTunes. It really helps us out and gives us extra visibility, helps us continue to grow. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next week, little buddies.